Andrei, let us kick things off. When did you start creating content on LinkedIn as a founder?
Cool. If I will try to guess, I bet it was 2016,
Okay.
2016, 2017, some. I bet, yeah, was quite long ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And at that moment, it was specifically for your business. Did you think that it was going to help my business, or like what was the strategy for it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to give you a bit of context, I was running an inbound marketing agency that
Okay.
operated in my local market, but I always wanted to work globally. And generally speaking, just because our core service was inbound marketing, right? Naturally, our
Yeah.
pipeline was coming from inbound, but for that company, our core channel was Facebook at that time, and that was a
Mm.
boom of Facebook communities. So I basically I replicated on LinkedIn what worked successfully to grow that company. But initially, I decided, I mean, I had a desire to build either an agency or consultant company. So later, actually, that led me to create Full Funnel together with Vlad, with my co-founder, and we
Yes.
moved the consulting way. Um, yeah, but the point was exactly the same. So just when you sell services, it's the only one way I believe you can generate ICP inquiries instead of trying to, and also differentiate yourself from the competition. So basically,
Mm.
that was always the essence. And it's not only coming from founders' perspective; it's also coming from the marketing perspective as well.
Love that. And did you find it easy in the beginning when you started to create content as a founder?
Oh, I would say, I mean, look, so it just again, it's maybe my example won't be relevant 100% because I started to create content when I was working for Kimberly Clark, and it was,
Mm.
let me calculate, 16 years ago. I
Wow.
bet when I wrote my first piece of content, right? And at that point, um, there was, let's say, no desire to whatever build an agency. So for me, I was out of my curiosity. I was reading a lot. I was listening to the podcast, to the courses, etc. And up to that point, I've been maybe 3 to 4 years in industry, right? So it was early
Mm.
beginning of my career, and I was gaining a lot of knowledge. And for me, it was an essential step to, first of all, to structure my knowledge. And I started, if you remember back to these days, Google had, if I'm correct, the platform was called Blogspot, something like this. So it was owned by Google.
Yes.
Yeah, so I just started my blog there. And whenever it's, maybe I feel that Substack actually copied that idea, because when you published your post, but people could sign up, not your email subscribers, but they could sign up for your RSS feed, and they were
Yeah.
receiving the updates. So I know that it was in some sense similar to email marketing, right? And apparently, I got a few inquiries from local business magazines, and they were like, "Would you be able to write on this topic? Would you be able to write on that topic?" And this is how it all has started. Obviously, the um, content quality or the structure of that content, right? It's way different from
Yeah, of
what it
course.
is nowadays. But also the truth is, right, nowadays, I've been
Yeah.
20 years in industry, right, comparing
Wow.
to young myself. But just to give you why I'm sharing all of this, right? When I started to publish it as a founder, I had already years of experience of
Yeah.
writing, creating content, and I knew what worked, what resonated with my target audience, and what doesn't.
Love that. You mentioned something very interesting that I want to touch upon on. You said that it helped you structure your knowledge, you could say. So for you, let's say if we are thinking of you right now as a founder who has an agency who's running, how important is it and how important is creating content on LinkedIn for you to make sure that your knowledge is not just within your head, but you're actually putting it out there?
Yeah, so it became a dominated principle for myself first because when with every client, with every new account-based marketing project that we launch, there are always new pitfalls, new bottlenecks. Let's put it like
Mm,
this, right? There are new questions that are coming, and so because every team is different,
it's different.
and then you start tweaking it, and then obviously you have lots of years of experience, so you start doing things, experimenting with a couple of things, and then when you nail it down, it still sits in your head. But for me, it's essential way of just
Mm,
thinking about if that would be a repetitive question, if that would be a repetitive
mm,
challenge or bottleneck, how can we accelerate the solution, right? How can we accelerate solving that problem and achieve time to value faster? So for this specific reason, I always start thinking and writing for myself, right? And first of all, it's not the
mm,
LinkedIn post itself. It's just writing structure and everything. So this is the essence of our business. This is what we do
mm.
always as the team. We start documenting why certain problems are happening and how to solve them, right? Because when you don't document, actually you don't have processes, you don't have solutions. It would be purely the guesswork. And then obviously when you start documenting it becomes way easier to create the content. So I I invented a very simple formula for successful
Okay.
LinkedIn content. Just writing about the questions and the questions that you had during discovery calls, during the meetings with clients, and just writing about the challenges that our target buyer personas face on a daily basis, right? And this is
Mm.
basically why people come on LinkedIn. They want to see the answers to their questions.
And this, I assume this is essentially the kind of content that gets you inbound inquiries as well. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
Mm.
that's absolutely correct.
And in your experience, do you think that is the only kind of content you need to basically show people that one, you understand their problems, two, you know how to solve it? Do you think that's enough for somebody to reach out to you?
No, I don't think so, to be honest.
Okay.
I think that there is something that we call an audience fatigue. So if,
Okay.
let's say, if you always come and educate and educate and educate in a format, let's say, of content that is something like how to create
Mm-hmm.
whatever, how to launch a pilot ABM program, how to select accounts, etc. At one point, you'll create this audience fatigue. So you need to have a healthy mix of content that you are publishing. And from our perspective, let's say if we'll take 100% of the content that you produce, the healthy split should be 60% of this, let's say, of the posts that demonstrate your expertise,
Mm-hmm.
then 20% of the engagement posts, and 20% of the promotion posts. Now, just to make it clear, right? So, by expertise posts, we talk in this post we talk about frameworks, specific solutions, right? So, these
Pinpoint
examples like
content.
how to, etc.
Yeah.
Then you have the engagement content, and this content is all about for people that motivate. It doesn't necessarily bring a tangible value in a sense that they could just pick up that post and replicate, but
Mm.
that helps them to confirm some of their thoughts, right? Or learn something new, engage with the peers. So simple examples when you mention, for example, good books that you read and you recommend, right? The list of these books. It could be provoking the discussions, or it could be sharing these stories, right? So these stories, they're not structured in a format that it's just how to post, but it's something that people could immediately recognize. So usually it's all about the jobs to be done of your target buyer persona. And then
And
you have, yeah, go ahead.
just one follow-up question. When you're talking about engagement content, let's say 20%, do you keep it relevant to your industry
Of
or do you
course.
keep it broad? Always, do you keep it relevant always?
Yeah, and there is a specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Likes and views, they don't pay your bills, right? So it's
Likes
not a
and cash,
problem to
yeah.
publish a new cat video or just find a funny content and then publish on LinkedIn. Obviously it
Mm.
has all the potential to go viral, but the question is, can you attribute it to pipeline generation, or maybe let's let's look at from another perspective. Does it really create your brand awareness, right? The fact that people
Mm,
engaged with that funny story or video doesn't mean that they paid attention to you as a company or to your product, right? That's
mm,
the reality, and this is what a lot of people don't or misunderstand, let's say, about social media and the content
yeah.
itself. So not all content was created equal. But let's say share your personal stories, right? Sharing personal anecdotes. This is what helps, because why I mentioned why I put this into engagement category, because it's not necessarily an educational post in a format that people can pick up and replicate, right?
And
But let's
execute.
say
Yeah.
the recent post that I wrote about what's happening to marketing function if it will be under the wings of CRO who was in the lead gen department, right? And then and a lot of people started immediately coming and saying, "Hey, I have observed this multiple times in my company."
Mm,
Right? This is why I mean it resonates. Yes, in some sense, obviously, it educates the company because it highlights the real problem, right? And maybe
yeah.
founders or C-level C-suite, right, who has that setup in the organization, they might at least question it, right? But primarily, it's all about that's also talking to your primary buyer persona, right? And by promotion, I mean it's also the last category. It doesn't mean that you need to comment, say something, look how awesome we are, or we have the best product, or whatever. We got a
Mm,
new award. A lot of companies do this, but I always say, who cares? To be honest,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We have attended this wonderful conference. Look how happy we are, right? So all of that stuff, nobody cares, to be honest. So that you gains, a new award from G2 or from Gartner,
Mm,
nobody really cares about this. So I'm always saying it's much more beneficial if you pick up that award and put it into the context, right? What helped you? So what did
mm,
you do? What kind of challenges your company solved, right? So
true. True. True.
apparently you gain this, right? And also from another perspective, by promotional, I mean you can start talking about case studies, right? So
Yeah.
case study but it should be structured in a meaningful way where you explain the real challenge and how the challenge was solved with your product, not just presenting point A company came with challenge, point B they're super happy and now they
They have
recommend
great
our
results.
product,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
go and book a demo, right? Not obviously not no way, but yeah, rethinking your approach and promoting your product in a meaningful and value added way to your target market is essential as well, because this is what in most cases generates
Love that.
the demand, because you can talk about educational content a lot, how to, etc., but the problem with LinkedIn or with any platform or any channel, there is no entrance barrier. So literally everybody could
Yes.
come and copy. I mean, we have seen this multiple times, for example, for ourselves, when people just copy our content and maybe change few words and publish. Or
Yeah.
this especially happens in the regional market. So, for example, in
Yes.
Spain or in France, a lot of people just simply copy paste, and translate our content. And but I mean, this nobody can do anything with this, and that's not the problem. The problem is that if you can't prove it with the real results, then this is
Yeah.
where you'll have the problem, right? Because the buyers, I always say, it's just a question of the first discovery call or demo call if you have a product, right? When they could figure out that everything that has been created is not authentic, right? And
Yeah. Love that. And it seems like you have a very strong understanding of the kind of content that you're creating, you want to create, how to attract your target audience. But it must have taken some time for you to figure this out, right? Even though you've been creating content for a while before becoming a founder and running an agency, how long did it take for you to create content that actually started generating inbound inquiries for you?
yeah, so if I look specifically at full funnel, and
Hmm.
when I started to post on LinkedIn, I would say 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, because in the beginning, nobody's listening to you. It takes time until people start paying attention. If you remember, there was very famous quote from Mahatma Gandhi when he said, I can't recall it exactly, but it was something like, at first they ignore you, then they start laughing at you, and then they start paying
Yes,
attention, right? So
I
something,
remember that.
I would say this is probably the best definition of what's happening with
Yeah.
any content strategy for any company.
It's the reason I ask you this, Andrei, is because a lot of the times when I'm working with founders or when I was working with other founders at agencies when I was employed by them, they would create content as a founder for their business for like 2 or 3 months, and then they would get impatient. They would say, "Oh well, this founder branding thing isn't for us." Even though we knew that their target audience was on LinkedIn, we knew that it would work if they were consistent for 6+ months. But at the same time, they would get impatient. Why do you think this happens? Do you think they don't see an ROI? Why is there a lack of patience for this in general?
So I would call out two major problems.
Okay.
First of all, for quite a long time, we were living in growth at all cost era, right? And from that perspective, that meant that companies were raising money like crazy, and they wanted to see results fast. And then if you zoom out from content for a second, if you look at everything what was happening with marketing and sales, right? Companies, they were indoctrinated by predictable revenue model. That means that you can just hire a lot of junior SDRs, then you raise money, you give that money to performance marketing, and you just put money into money machine and you get more dollars out, right? So in the beginning, when the competition, maybe like, let's say 12 years, 13 years
Yeah.
ago, when the competition was lower, it was enough, right? And a lot of companies were just growing like crazy. And funny enough, a lot of companies that grew because of that motion, they became market leaders, and they
Oh
are
yes.
often mentioned or quoted in the content marketing blogs as leaders. But then and especially when content marketers mention them, I always ask, but what special do you see in them? So why do you admire their current marketing and sales? Because I know that a lot of people, they're just laying off their teams, they are spamming like crazy. So there is nothing, there is nothing to admire, to be honest, but that's another story, right? So I was just sharing that a lot of companies that even if their company was founded later, they were still indoctrinated by all of this. And if you look, for example, at blogs, I don't know, six years ago, it was all about how Dropbox grew, how Airbnb grew, and people were always looking at unicorns and thinking they even don't question how is it applicable to their audience,
Today or
right?
not?
Is it applicable to their market? It's just everybody had this growth hacking mindset that I just need to find that hack and grow,
We're
right?
gonna
So
go. Yeah.
I was always saying that most of the companies, they need to learn the lesson the hard way, right? That's the first thing. The second one is usually a lack of marketing background, a lack of a proper marketing background, right? From that perspective, it means why should we invest? Even to answer a question, I bet that companies that you have mentioned, right, are thinking about how often did they interview their clients? How often did they invest into customer research, right? How often did they invest into marketing and sales alignment, bringing the teams together, nailing down the go-to-market fundamentals, etc., right? In most cases, that never happens because the idea is simple. I hired you. I don't really care. Just, generate
They usually
money.
look for quick fixes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and why a lot of, especially if it's a founder-led organization, in the beginning, they usually were the primary revenue driver. So they have the network in a specific field, right? So they start selling that product to their network, and so they get to some revenue point. From this point, they exhaust their network. They don't have opportunities to sell. They start hiring sales and marketing, but they assume that these people could come and immediately replicate what the founder did, right? that's not the case anymore, right?
Yeah.
These people come, they don't have this network, and in most cases, what's happening in between, right? There is no marketing, there is no brand awareness. There is a false assumption that if you had the network and some companies bought because of the relationship and trust, right? It doesn't mean that the brand awareness is in place.
Yeah.
Literally, nobody knows you, right? That's the reality. And then from that perspective, obviously, we can add a few more things. It also depends on the if it's bootstrapped or if it's VC or
VC back.
P-backed company,
Yeah.
right? Then the things are changing. You never know what conversations or what promises they made to the investors. And obviously, if they promise the golden mountains, that approach is immediately translated to the marketing and sales team, and all of this creates this problem. So these are mainly these three
Interesting.
reasons why that's happening.
Love that. I think it makes a lot of sense. For you, Andrei, I want to ask you, like, probably the last question before we wrap it up is throughout your journey so far as a founder creating content on LinkedIn, were there any major pain points that you had to overcome? Maybe when it came to content or your brand awareness in general as a founder?
No, I honestly, the only challenge that's
Mm-hmm.
not only me, but I would just speak about my entire team. The only
Okay.
challenge that we have faced is when you have more demands than your capacity, and then you become just literally busy with execution. You simply don't have time to
Mm.
create it, right? That's so time is the only challenge that we have ever faced, but nothing else, to be honest.
Love that. So you would say in the beginning when you were initially building your founder brand, since time wasn't an issue, you could easily dedicate to it, but now you feel like time is like a major constraint.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Love that. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Andre, for this insightful conversation. I think there's a lot that people are going to learn off the back of this. And it was a pleasure having you here, and I hope you had a great time on the episode.
Likewise, it was a big
Awesome.
pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Awesome.